Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, my name is Melissa Helquist. I'm faculty in the English department here, and I'm going to be moderating this panel. That title sounds sort of funny because I don't know that there's going to be much moderating needed. But today's the first event of Disability Awareness Week, and thanks for being here. The goal of Disability Awareness Week is to provide new perspectives about disability, to invite conversations about how disability is part of everyday life. Today's Student Voices panel is titled, Stand Up to Stigma, Let's Talk About Mental Health. We have some wonderful panelists today who are graciously offering their experience and their insights to help start a conversation about mental health and the stigma that is too often attached. You may have come to this event for any number of reasons: free pizza, curiosity, extra credit from your teacher, or maybe because of your own experiences. Whatever brought you here today, I hope that you'll engage with the topic and with the panelists as they share their experiences. And I hope you'll come away having learned something. We all have mental health. Just what our mental health is different. It's something that we all have in common. So I hope you'll take something from this panel that can have an impact on your own experiences. So I'm going to turn the time over to the panelists. And I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then we'll invite questions from the audience. So think about what you might want to know more about and what you want to ask of these panelists. This goes without saying, but in your questions, just make sure that you're respectful of their time and their willingness to come and share. Okay, so we're going to have a microphone kind of coming around the room. So if you want to ask a question, just stand up. Okay. So. Or you can come up here if you want to be at the podium. I'm happy to give up my spot. So we're going to start with, I'm just going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves. Tell us anything that you want. Tell us your name. Tell us anything that you want to say about your studies, your professional goals, your hobbies, anything that you think is relevant. And then the bigger question, how do you define your experience in terms of mental health? What would help the audience here to understand your experience? So we'll just start to my left with Rochelle.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Rochelle. I'm a full-time student here at SLIC, and I also work downstairs at the Veteran Center. I aspire to be a journalist one day. That's what I'm going to school for. I guess how I would define myself, or define my
your
life,
experience,
right?
Yeah.
I think mental health goes hand in hand with drug addiction, and I am in recovery. So I think a lot of people, and I can only talk for myself, I would use drugs to combat mental illness. Many people can't afford health care, and a lot of people don't really talk about mental health. So I think drug addiction is probably one of the biggest ways that how I kind of dealt with PTSD and traumatic experience as a child. And when you find drugs, I mean, drugs are great, right? No, just kidding. They ruin your life. That's what Louis C.K. said. He said, drugs are so effing good that they ruin your life. So basically that's what happened. And I'm glad that I have the resources I do now through the VA and through even down here, downstairs with Mike Foster and Dr. Aaron Ahern. Just talking to them even helps me. So I will hand the mic over.
Yeah, please give them applause.
My name is J.C. Graham, and I work at Utah Valley University. I'm the coordinator of the Suicide Prevention Program. I'm a social worker. I was a student for a very long time. It took me 10 years to get my associate's degree because I thought math was a conspiracy to keep me from graduating. I finally made it through math, and I went on and got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in social work. I do have a disability. I have post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm a survivor of child abuse and also incest, and I live with many symptoms related to post-traumatic stress disorder. I have anxiety on a daily basis. I did learn that excitement and fear both feel the same physiologically, so I just want to let you know that I'm really excited to be here on this panel. And that's all I have to say for right now.
Hello, my name is Gregory. I am a full-time student here at SLIC as well, and I work at the Community Writing Center downtown, which is really great. It gives me a lot of opportunities to serve people in my community that I probably wouldn't be doing. I guess mental health to me, I suffer from severe anxiety and as well as depression onset by the anxiety. And I've been through quite a bit of traumatic experiences, so I'm sure there's some symptoms of PTSD as well from past experiences. Yeah, that's what I have to say.
Hi, my name is Victoria, and I am going into psychology. And I have issues with bipolar disorder with psychotic features. And I guess one of the hardest things that goes hand in hand with that is homelessness. And I think that should be brought up and aware to a lot of people, that a lot of people who suffer from mental disabilities tend to be homeless or once were homeless at one point. I know I was, and so yeah, that's a big key point. There you go.
I'm Scott Rostenberg. I'm the old guy of the bunch. Usually the old guy wherever I go. I'm really nervous. Anxiety as well. ADD, depression, and I too am a recovering addict. I have about 16 years clean since this September 3rd, 1999. Thank you. I found that I dealt with my ADD when I was a child with, in my early teens, with pharmaceutical weight loss of my friends' mothers, their medication, and it made me feel normal. And I guess there was no education on ADD and ADHD, so I self-medicated the best I could, and it led me to bigger and better things. But there's a lot more knowledge and treatment and awareness of my disease or my illness or my disorder, whatever you want to call it today. Wish there had been more when I was younger. But I just graduated in June as a paralegal. I took some extra years of English and math, and I dropped out of Salt Lake Community College in 1984. Just too wasted all the time to make it, and I was pursuing a career in data processing. Imagine where I'd be now if I'd have stayed with that. But I'm here today to let you guys know that this can be dealt with, at least my disorder, and I didn't choose to hide it in class. And I'm going to go ahead and tell them what. Is it okay if I just tell them what my comparison is? There's a question on here. You guys ought to, I don't know if you got a list of these questions, but they're winners. It says, the first one is, how do you define your experience in terms of mental health, and what would help the audience understand your experience? Well, we'll use with you guys with anxiety and ADD and ADHD and PCP or whatever it is. You'll know that my comparison is, I actually put down, imagine driving a car in the middle of traffic, and the person next to you asks you to explain how to drive. Well, even though you know how, and you're actually driving, you're unable to explain to them in detail how to drive. Then you obsess over why you can't explain to them, and it becomes a physical impairment. So that's how I kind of explain and articulate my disorder. Thanks for giving me more time than the others.
So thank you all for those introductions. And now, as Scott said, I've got some questions, but if you want to ask a question, feel free to stand up and we'll incorporate that. As we ask these questions, panelists, if you want to respond, great. If you don't have to feel obligated to. And even though the panelists all deserve lots of rounds of applause, just for this part of it, you don't have to applaud for every response, unless you really want to. You might like that, right? It might be nice. Just so that we can have more conversation. So, my next question, what do people tend to misunderstand about mental health? Another way of thinking about this, if you could clear up one thing or a handful of things about mental health and your experience, what would it be? Anyone? Tori?
I think one misconception of mental disability is I think a lot of people downplay intelligence with disabled people. We tend to be very intelligent people. Sometimes that's what people struggle with the most, is they're a little too smart and they think things through a little too much, especially with those who have anxiety or like OCD. They kind of just dwell in that giant mess of thoughts. And so I think just recognizing the fact that it doesn't always necessarily mean that they're lacking something in their head, as it is maybe there's a little too much going on in their head.
Sorry if I keep looking over here. My wife's here, so it's like a little comforting just looking over there. I think something that is very misunderstood, especially in my circumstances, is that you could turn this off. Like, I can't just turn off excess of adrenaline in my brain. Like, it's just not something I can just flip a switch. And actually, so I work with Melissa, but I'm going to share some experiences with work. And so I guess I have this problem, with my anxiety, that I'll overanalyze everything. And maybe it leads to too many text messages or emails to people I work with just to make sure I'm doing everything correctly. And this is like something that causes a lot of stress with friends in certain times, because I think like I'm something's not clicking, but it's just me wanting to triple check that things are going okay and like I'm doing exactly what like they're expecting out of me. And that can become a bit taxing for everyone, for them and for me. It's not like fun overanalyzing every aspect of my life. But for people that do maybe do that, I would just offer some suggestions that they can't turn it off. But you also don't have to give too much into it. You can just, sometimes all we need to hear is just, yeah, for sure. And that helps a lot.
Part of the question is if you could clear up one point of misunderstanding, what would it be? I think that what I would like to clear up is that we don't need to live in secrecy and privacy about having mental health issues. There's no need to feel ashamed. It just is what it is. We don't have people be ashamed if they have diabetes. I don't think we should have that kind of social pressure on people if they have mental health issues. It just is the way some people's brains are working. So that's what I would change, is to, one, definitely reduce the stigma, and also encourage people that there's really no need to be ashamed about it.
Sure. I think one of the biggest misconceptions that's hard to deal with is post-traumatic stress. People think sometimes you're faking it. From the veteran side, it's the VA is always there to help, but sometimes there are these guys that come back and their life's in shambles. They're divorced, they're drinking a lot. They go to the VA for help. They, put in for disability for PTSD and they get denied. And it's like, that's very discouraging. And I think that's why a lot of veterans don't even try to go get help, because they're just, well, I got denied. Well, I'll try again, But I think, sometimes there are people like this gentleman said, you can't turn it off. It's not a fake disease. And I think a lot of people think that. That it's just something that you can deal with, or just deal with it later, or deal with it this way. Well, the best way to deal with it is doing things like this. Because this forces me to talk to a room full of strangers about a dirty secret, right? No one likes to talk about their mental health issues, but just doing this is helping me. So thank you guys.
Okay, so what kind of support systems, and you've talked about this a little bit, but what kind of support systems have you found that have been helpful and you can think about in your student life, in your everyday life, in the workplace? What's been useful to you?
I'll go first. So I use a lot of support systems. When I was a student, I went to Utah Valley University and also Utah State University and then Aurora University in Illinois. And all three universities or colleges, I utilized the disability services on campus. Especially during that time frame when I was first in school, I was going through a court process where the person that abused me was being prosecuted, and I was triggered with flashbacks, and I was super hypervigilant and not feeling safe in my environment. And going through the disability services helped me to get services like be able to take my test in a private room, because if someone even just moved behind me, I would flinch and not be able to focus on my test. So that was very helpful for me to use the disability services. Also, I utilized services through Division of Rehabilitation Services. I lived in extreme poverty back then, and I couldn't afford to go to college, let alone buy my textbooks. And I had to set up an individualized career plan with my counselor through Voc Rehab. That was very helpful. Other support systems, I participated in individual therapy. For a period of time, I felt like I was on a therapy marathon. I was doing individual therapy, group therapy, individual therapy. And most of therapy actually happened outside of therapy because I was just dealing with a lot of intense stuff. I still use therapy. I have a therapist I go see once a month, and that's great. In the workplace setting, if I need to, I'll use the human resources. I don't know if people know this, but because of the American Disability Act, we have some protections in even our jobs if we need accommodations for our jobs, and so that can be helpful. Also talking to my supervisor if I need to make some requests for things like, I had to set a boundary for myself that as far as clinically, if I had a client come in who happened to be a pedophile, I tended to refer those people out. So that was an accommodation to be able to work that out with my supervisor. So those are some of the services I use. Good friends are awesome. Another resource that's available for all of us, and some people don't know this, but there's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number, which is available 24 hours a day. You don't necessarily have to be suicidal to call that number. You can just be having an anxiety attack, and they'll help you process that. But if you are experiencing suicide ideation, it's a great resource also.
So for me, I was homeless right when I was 18, and some of the resources that helped me, and even helped me get into college, get my GED and everything, was one, the VOA, which is the Volunteers of America. Those of you who are under 23, I believe, you can go there. It's a really great resource. There's also the LIFE program really helped me get my GED because I didn't have even the money to pay for it at that time. And I had a great support system with my boyfriend who helped me get into college, which was a very hard process because I have anxiety issues, and I was like, no, I can't do it, but it worked out fine. Now I'm here. And so other resources, the Writing Center at South City campus, they can provide you with a lot of different resources that you can go to. And they have like a food bank down there. And yeah, those are just some really good resources. So, and then of course the Disability Resource Center and all of you guys. So yeah, those are great places to go to, and I advise you guys to check them out.
I thought I'd need a Coke to keep awake during this thing, and I'm really glad I went to Arby's and had like 5 of them, so I was all on top of anxiety. I'm sitting here like petrified, and I'm really kind of relaxed around you guys because I know that you're like me, a lot of you. So I apologize. I got my Tic Tacs here, and they're moving before my eyes. I'm hallucinating on the Pepsi. Okay, so I'm going to go back to question 2 because that's my disorder. Sometimes I don't listen. I miss the whole thing. I've been able to kind of deal with that. So, except here, of course. What do people tend to misunderstand about mental health, in my opinion? I don't know if it was mentioned, but I have other abilities that outweigh my disabilities, I feel. I think that some of the things I can do make up for it. And not that it needs to be made up for, because it doesn't. It's just that the shortcomings I have there the void can be filled by other things that are productive and healthy in my mind, and by helping others understand that have similar problems like I do in that respect. It helps me get out of myself, and it helps me find serenity. So you guys don't even have these as questions. I have this question 1, 2, and 3 because that's the way my mind works. So the support system that I use vocational rehab. They got me therapy. They paid for therapy, and I was educated on it. I didn't even know what it was I had, and people were telling me that I had selective hearing, and I didn't listen, and I didn't care. And the professional I was put with immediately recognized that I had ADD. And I'm like, well, how can you tell? And she was able to mention some of these things that I was going through that were symptoms. And it was really enlightening. So to go and get a counselor there was paramount. But DRC, I can't emphasize DRC enough. I didn't even know they existed when I came back to school. I had no idea. And I thought, how am I going to make this? Because I sat in class, and I was like her. Somebody makes a move, and you're shot. You have to start over. I was told that during my life I had compensated for this ADD. It used to be ADHD. And I guess there's some logic to that, but those 2 resources were instrumental in helping me not only graduate, but deal with my disability, or I don't even know how you want to address it, but my problem, I guess. It helped me deal with it and understand it. So.
It on this little handle right here. It's weird holding it. I feel like I'm gonna. Okay, yeah, I can't stress the DRC enough either. When I first went up there, I was like super nervous. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna have to tell them why. Like, obviously you have to tell them a little bit, but I was like, I'm gonna say, I have PTSD and this is why. Like, oh my God, it's not like that. They don't judge you. They ask certain questions and they get that and the paperwork, and it's completely confidential. And I wish more students would utilize it, because I think I feel like you can maximize your testing when you're just in a quiet room and it's just you and your calculator or whatever, and you just go. But yeah, when it's like I'm in a room full of people, I just stare at everybody else. Like, oh, they're writing their name down. Okay, I'll start with that, you know? So DRC is great. Another one of my resources is definitely, I like group therapy. I like going to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, you know, CA meetings. But as far as, that's kind of more for the mental nurturing. Physical nurturing is definitely fitness. I think that would help with, honestly, a lot of mental health issues. It gives you confidence. Weightlifting, you know, to just be like, wow, I just moved that, you know, it feels good. So, and also eating healthy. I have a cheeseburger right now, so just cut that out. But I do eat healthy, I try to, so, for the most part.
So any questions from the audience? I have more questions, but Daniel, do you want to?
I have a son who has ADHD, and a daughter has OCD, and they're both making me wacko. And I'm not quite sure how to handle it, how to deal with it. When I talk to my son about his ADHD, I'll say, son, can't you just stop and calm down and think about it? And he'll say, Mom, can you grow a third ear? That's always his answer to me. So I would like to know maybe what causes ADHD and what causes OCD.
I can't speak on the ADHD, but I'm sure it's very similar. I do have some minor, sometimes excessive OCD, and I think it does infuriate people at certain times. For example, this morning I had to wake up at 6 a.m. because I knew the dishes weren't done. Really, I needed like the extra sleep, but I couldn't like sleep well throughout the night. And if someone were to come up to me and to say like, can't you not clean, even though I know where they're coming from is from like a kind heart, it wouldn't really like register like that. I think I'd become a bit offended. Personally, I think what would help is maybe someone sitting me down and saying like, why, like what's really going on in your life? Like, is all of your homework done? Like, how's work going? Like, are you meeting your deadlines? Because there's usually like a more root problem going on in my life, or as well as like, can maybe I do the dishes for you while you do this task? Just things like that, like trying to understand where they're coming from would be pretty beneficial, I think, for both of you, because then you guys can start to understand each other more and start fostering, like, we need people in our, like, on our team. And I mean, at least a lot of my family members, as kind as they are, they're not really on my team, just because they don't understand how to become on my team, I guess. So that's the advice I'd give.
So for OCD, I have, like, more so I used to have issues with OCD, and through therapy, I've been able to move through a lot of it. I don't know if your kid, or is that right, your kid? No, my daughter. Your daughter? Yeah, so I don't know how her OCD comes out. Sometimes it's externalized, sometimes it's internalized. And for me, I internalized a lot of my OCD, so I would obsess over thoughts in my head and, like, you know, scenarios and things like that I would run through my head. Other people will present it externally, so it's maybe cleaning or, having to wash your hands a bunch, things like that. I can say for internal OCD, best thing to do for someone who suffers from that is to just be able to have a conversation with them, get them outside of their head, and you can talk to them about anything, and just the dialogue itself helps someone with internal OCD to be able to let go of that. So, hope that helps.
I'm afraid I can't help you on the ADD or ADHD. I don't know its source or its origin or the characteristics I know well. I don't know how it evolved because I didn't do much research on it. I didn't find out until about 2 years ago that I had it. So I just more or less dealt with the solutions for it and tried to make friends with it. And it would probably be a good idea because I have 3 boys. I'm a single father. I have 3 boys. I have 4 boys. 3 of them are under 12. And the middle one seems to he's starting to show symptoms of it. And it's maddening. And I can vouch for your daughter as far as you just can't hold still. You have to be doing something and your mind just isn't quiet. It's just not quiet. I mean, you want, everything around you is not interesting except what's in your head and things you want to be interesting. That's the way my characteristics surface anyway.
I have some thoughts. I know a lot of times people are like, what causes OCD, which means obsessive compulsive disorder. We use acronyms a lot, and sometimes we might not know what those are. Or ADHD, attention deficit disorder. I once had it explained to me that our psychological functioning is like a deck of cards, and sometimes you just get dealt those cards. It's the way our brains work, right? I don't really know what causes those things. It's just the way some of our brains work. As far as some thoughts about OCD, I had some tendencies of OCD features. I relabeled it and call it obsessive conscientious disorder because I'm super conscientious, which is kind of like, compulsive. But I think for myself, some of those features kick in more when I'm having anxiety, like trying to have a sense of control. But I also know sometimes people's brains that's the way it works, and I think that's how it worked for me. When my daughter was little, she's 30 now, when she was 3 years old, I used to be really obsessive of how her toys were organized and how my books were organized, and they had to be alphabetized and put in place, and I was really rigid about that. If you came to my house today, the toys are just in the closet because I have grandkids and they're not all in order anymore. I've learned that it's okay to kind of let go of some things, but there's some things that I'm still really, rigid about, like finances. I have to have my finances to the T. Everything is subtracted. I know what I have, and somebody told me that's a good thing to have obsessions about. And laundry. My laundry is always done, folded. Those are pluses. But, when it finds that it's getting in the way of my everyday relationships and interacting with other people because I have to stay home and organize my DVDs, or I can't go somewhere because of that obsession, that's when I have to kind of check in and get reality checks with friends or family and be like, okay, I can let this part go, but later on I'll come back and organize things, but I can go to the movie with you or something like that. So for me, I think that it goes, when I'm stressed out, I get more compulsive when my anxiety is really high.
Any other audience questions?
There's someone over there.
So if you were to have a conversation with a politician, okay, like thinking of our greater community, what would be things of what you would say to that politician of what's important within our community and our mental health in our community?
Thank you. A politician. Choose from. I guess I would just pick Governor Herbert and just talk about the way police handle people that have mental illness, there is no training, I believe. There is no training when they encounter someone. It's either comply or, less lethal to deadly force. But I wish more people or more politicians would talk about that and maybe enforce stricter codes for police departments, not only in Utah but everywhere else. But it definitely happens here. People that have younger kids. There was a woman, I can't remember obviously her name, but she was schizophrenic, and they ended up killing her because she wouldn't listen to them. Well, it's like you can't deal with someone like that. You're not dealing with someone that will respond the way you want to. So I just wish that there was more training implemented in the police departments for people that have mental disorders, and for also children that have mental disorders.
I have an answer to that question. I would advocate definitely for, everyone always wants more money, but yes, more money. Money for funding, more coverage for adults. I know that there's programs like the CHIP program for children, for health insurance for low-income families, but there's a lot of provisions where an adult with a mental disability might not qualify for services because they're an adult and maybe they don't have small children, or maybe they do have children and their children are covered, but the adult's not covered. Right now in the Utah legislative session, and especially with Governor Herbert, there's conversation about Medicaid, and I would advocate for more coverage for adults under Medicaid and to have access to treatment and medication. Even our elders, medication is an issue for those folks. So, more money.
I think to add on to that specific with medication is it gets a little rough. I work in the jail system for my job, as well as a homeless youth resource center. And the problem is there's as we're supposed to be tried by a court, and all of our circumstances are different, but we're living in a reality that a lot of people don't have the resources to get proper medication. If you have OCD or anxiety, and you can't get proper medication, of course you're going to go to any drug dealer and get weed. It's the only thing that'll help you. It's so tiring living with constant over analyzing every situation of your life, if you tied your shoes right. But then if they get arrested with weed, they're going to go to jail for X amount of time, versus maybe we should throw a little more funding into some medical care options so they can get properly medicated and get into proper therapy so they can even wean off that medication. But there's a lot of hypocrisy going on from that standpoint, in my opinion.
Adding on to the homelessness, I think biggest problem is, at least for me, I know a lot of people who are 18 to 20 who I'm like, hey, you should go to college, it's really fun. And they're like, yeah, but they come up with all of these excuses, and most of it has to do with mental illness and drug use. And I feel like if there was more funding for these young adults, then they would be able to realize that they do have the opportunity to go to college, pursue a career, and that there is hope. And that if there's more money being put into our youth, then that's the new generation coming up. That's what we need to be investing in, because they're going to be the next ones to decide what does happen, and that should be taken very seriously, rather than having this stigma of, oh, well, they're homeless on the streets and they're not going to make it anywhere and they're just going to keep going down this destructive path. I think a lot of assumptions are made, and so money doesn't get put into these programs, and I think that that's rather unfair, and that's selective thinking. And yeah.
I was in the jail system too, but I was on the other side. I think there should be, with your, in context of the politician who asked that, I think that there should be more correspondence for those who are trained to deal with our disorders, and the funding that's used to get us education and therapy and employment. I think, and it's just my own opinion, is that in some of these organizations, they just throw money at the problem. And I know there's never enough, but you get a check written and you're on your way, instead of somebody taking you by the hand and showing you exactly what you're supposed to do with that education, therapy, guidance. So that's my answer for the political question.
I know there were some questions over on this side of the room.
Oops, sorry. Okay, so when I was in high school, I always got, I had this issue. See, I have 3 disorders that the doctors are able to identify, and then 3 that they still haven't. So, and every year I'd have that issue to where everybody would, I guess most of the teachers would put me down, say I couldn't do most of the things, where I could actually probably do it better than they could in some senses. Not trying to show up anybody. There was always that issue where people be like, okay, you have a disability, so we'll give you this easier than this. And I mean, I used to like that, but now it seems as if that they think I have, like, there's no other option, that I'm pretty much, what's the word I'm looking for here? 1 second. Weak? Weak can work. They think I'm pretty much weak, or I'm incapable. There, that was the word. I'm incapable of doing it myself, or I need help with everything. What's your outtake on this, by any chance? Right.
Like I said earlier, a big misconception is people think, oh, these people are uneducated, and make that assumption. And I've had seizures and stuff, and so I have that as one of my accommodations. And so that gives me lenience on attendance. However, that doesn't mean that I necessarily have to abuse that. And so I can take the initiative to go to class and do these things despite the fact that I have these accommodations. And so my best suggestion for you is, despite the fact that these people may be putting you down and saying, oh, you can't do this, my best suggestion is that you can turn around and be like, hey, I can do this. And you show them that, and you can prove them wrong. And do that for yourself, because that's what really matters.
What was your name? I'm sorry. Joseph? Yeah, I never said it. No, you're fine. You are Joseph. You are not defined by your illness. And you might not be good at certain things, whatever it was, but I'm sure, like you said, you are brilliant at other things. And I would focus on those things that good. As far as being in public school system, sometimes that happens. Sometimes certain instructors or teachers, they're not, trained or capable to kind of understand where you're coming from or what the problem is. But I guess my suggestion would be to find that one teacher, even if he or she is not teaching a class, find that one teacher, counselor that sees that you are Joseph and you're not defined by your illness and you're not weak. And find whatever you like to do, drawing. You might not be good at math, but you might be an amazing writer. You might not be good at sports, but you might be an amazing artist. Like, your illness does not define you. So, and I'm sure, like you said, like, or I think this young lady said it, like, we might not be good at certain things, but I think people with mental illnesses are geniuses. That's just my opinion. But we just haven't found some of us haven't found what we're geniuses with, if that makes sense.
Well, and kind of a follow-up question to that. Sorry. Since I'm a faculty member, you've talked about kind of college resources, counselors, Disability Resource Center. What can faculty do to support you in your learning? Either what you wish would happen or an example of something that a faculty member did that was very helpful for you.
I'll take that one. So I think what's frustrating is, in my experience, is that like we're here, I mean, I pay quite a bit of money that I don't have to attend school to learn things that like my professors are teaching. And with my form of anxiety, like I can't sit down to even do an assignment unless I know that I can do all of it perfectly, even if it takes me 30 times. So I know that I'm gonna learn the material because my brain won't like shut off until I learn that material. But I think a lot of professors are so used to the abuse from like students that, oh, I didn't do my homework because I got busy. Like, but the reality is like I really didn't do my homework because I didn't have 7 hours to sit down and do one assignment, which like a lot of professors are only calculating someone to have to do for a half hour. But that's just like the reality. So I think if I could sit down with every professor and not seem like I'm groveling or begging for them to extend this one assignment, like that would be very helpful. But it just turns out that a lot of times, like you have 4 missing assignments, but I know like I'm doing the material, it's just I can't do it as fast. But by the time the test is there, like I'll understand like what I'm being taught. So just maybe a little leniency and would be nice.
So let's see. So I really did think math was a conspiracy because I had to take math 95, like 5 times. Math 99, a couple times. I would drop out of college, take a couple years off because of this roadblock called math. And every time I did a math problem, I'd have flashbacks and I'd be hypervigilant. And if there was a man in the room that was even breathing, it would trigger my flashbacks. So what could a faculty do for me? Well, in my case, I had an amazing math faculty for my math 1050 class who actually let me meet with a tutor one-on-one. I had a tutor I met 20 hours a week for a year to get through one math class. I got an incomplete, and when I finished the coursework, the teacher accepted it and posted my grade. That was a miracle, and because of that, I was able to complete my associate's degree. That same year, I got my associate's, I got my bachelor's degree. A year later, I got my master's degree. It was just getting through that math and dealing with all the flashbacks that I'd have. I don't know why math triggered me, but it did, and it still does. I'm glad that in my current job, I just go ask a math faculty, hey, what's the answer to this? But, so I think having a flexible assignment deadlines once in a while, if a student needs it incomplete, work with them around that. And if someone gives a math faculty a letter from Disability Services, take that for what it's worth. I mean, that student had to go and provide documentation that verified they had a disability to get that letter. You don't necessarily need to ask them, well, what is your disability? You know, you need to tell me all about it. Well, no, they don't. But as a faculty, as far as under the law, you do need to work under and provide the accommodations that are in the letter from the Disability Services. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to give a student an incomplete. I don't think that's ever in a letter. It wasn't in my letter. I just had a faculty that was willing to work with me. So I guess Greg said, don't assume that they're just, trying to work the system, that, it really is legitimate that this person is working as hard as they can. This reminded me when I came up here today, because I live in Utah County. I came up to this college, and around 1994, I had a therapy assignment to come to Salt Lake Community College and just walk around the campus to desensitize myself to the idea of going to college. So I would come here once, maybe a week, and just kind of drive around campus. I couldn't even get out of my car because my anxiety was so bad, and then eventually came into campus. I didn't end up attending Salt Lake Community College, but that's what it was like for me. I would have to drop out. That's why it took me 10 years to get my associates, is because I'd drop out and come back. But once I really had a good support system, such as disability services and awesome faculty, using therapy and learning skills and strategies of how to manage my anxiety. I still have anxiety, but I manage it better than I used to. That made a positive difference, and I was able to be successful. I don't know what else I have to say. I guess I'll pass it on to you or someone else.
Okay, we had a question.
So I'm a yoga teacher at Salt Lake Community College, and I get those disability letters. And I know once the person has gotten the disability letter, that if they don't want to talk about it, I just read the letter and give them their privacy. Because I teach yoga, I'm able to share my story. I'm extremely bipolar with psychotic tendencies and anxiety, PTSD, the whole bit, but very bipolar. And yoga and meditation is what's helped me. I've been off meds since 2008 when I started teaching yoga for Slick. So I share that the first day. And so a lot of my students will then feel comfortable talking about their depression and their issues and coming and talking to me. And so my question is as a faculty, I realize a lot of these disorders are undiagnosed, so they can't go to the Disability Resource Center and get the piece of paper. So how can a teacher, without prying, without breaking those lines of getting too much involved, let the students know that it's okay to talk to us about that? If you have OCD and that's why your papers are going to be late, you can come talk to me and tell me that, and we can give you a timeline. So what can teachers do that isn't prying and invasive to help with that?
Oh, you like this, Dan? Yeah, thank you. You're accommodating me. What the teachers can do is what you did. The first day in class, you opened that door to make everybody feel that you're not alone. You're not the only one that, look, this is what I have. And you weren't afraid to do that. And that would be amazing if, teachers and other faculty would do that, would step forward and be like, okay, well, this is who I am. And it not only gives other students the courage, but it makes light of it. It's okay to talk about. It's okay to laugh at sometimes, I think that's probably the best example. Your story is what teachers and instructors could do.
I just had an instructor come up to me, and he pulled me aside from class, and he asked, okay, I understand that you have accommodations, but what else can I do to help you? And he just said straightforward like that, and I felt completely comfortable being like, hey, you can do the A, B, and C for me. That'd be awesome. And usually teachers and students can work out things, and it worked out really well for me. And I feel more comfortable having a teacher ask me hey, what can I do for you? Because sometimes it's really hard for the student to be like, I need this. Asking for help can be very hard for people, especially with mental disabilities. So.
It's got to be a challenge for you to determine whether or not you're going to approach that student, because I'm the opposite. Excuse me. I'd rather it was hard enough for me just to hand it to the person. There's a little bit of embarrassment that you have something that has to be accommodated with specific circumstances. I loved math, but that was my problem. Somebody even moved next to me, and I lost the whole thing in 1050 and calculus, and Some of those were one-page problems, and you get to the end. And so my point is that every one of the faculty members accommodated me in just the way I wanted them to, and you would probably do the same. It was probably just my interpretation of embarrassment or something I wanted to hide, but they went above and beyond the call of duty of delivering the papers to the testing center and making sure. I think that's Linda back there, isn't it? Yeah. She was instrumental. I remember her many, many times helping me, and you just don't feel like, you know, when you get there, you're like, I just want to, just get me in my room, don't ask me why, and give me my pencil, and go away. And that's what they did. And it was wonderful. Except I didn't know that you could do the 4-hour exams in two-hour parts. So there was a couple of times I was pretty burnt coming out of those rooms. And that wasn't you guys' fault. That was my own, because I didn't inquire. And that just kind of broaches the subject of ask and find out what's available. Find out everything that's available for your disability, or you will suffer in certain circumstances. I remember I sat in the room for 4 hours, and I was hungry, and I had to go to the bathroom, and it was that math, it was my calculus exam. And I'll remember that. But back to the answer to that question, is faculty was instrumental in making sure that I got everything I needed. So I have no complaints whatsoever.
I teach at Utah Valley University, and one of the things, I guess maybe part of it's because I've been on the other side as far as being a student. I always will just make a general announcement in class like we're supposed to do, but I also just be really open and inviting students to meet with me, tell them where my office is and how they can connect with me, or, you know, email or phone number. And then if just a general announcement too, because sometimes on the letters that the students give me, it might not give me their contact information. So I ask them to include that so that we can make arrangements for those services and not have it be in front of their peers. Some students are really open about, I'm cool with talking in front of my peers, you know, and that's awesome, and that's okay, but some people want that privacy. So just try to create more opportunities for all students to come and visit you privately if they need to.
And related to that question, kind of talked about what faculty can do. Thinking about other students who may be dealing with these issues and just starting to explore resources, what advice would you give? What do you wish you would have known sooner?
One thing that I learned is statistically, the majority of people have a mental problem, whatever that may be. We are not perfect human beings. We have all these little chemicals in our brains, and there's a lot of imbalances because we're not perfect. And so I would give the advice to other students who have these issues is that you're not alone. Most, especially studying psychology, most people have some disorder, whether it be depression, whether it be PTSD, you know, autism, whatever it may be. And to just realize that you don't have to feel alone, you don't have to feel isolated in class, you don't, you know, have to feel like you have this burden on your shoulders that you have to hide. You know, you can be able to just talk to people, and you'd be surprised how many people understand. And I have to say, going out in public, I feel uncomfortable. Going to the grocery store or anything like that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, people. But at SLIC, it's one of the few places where I'm like, oh, I feel okay, because I know so many students are like, what am I doing right now? You know, it's all kind of new to new students, and they feel kind of isolated. And so I at least feel a little more comfortable because I know I'm not the only one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I have a hard time accepting like my strengths. So like I have a sister that's through college, had a full ride her whole time in college. My brother, who, in my opinion, is doing like wonderful and marvelous things. And here am I, like, in my mind going, okay, well, like, if I go and I step into like this resource center and I fill out this paper, that's accepting defeat. Like, and that's a fallacy. It's not true. And I think it's important to realize that, like, if you're using resources, you're not like admitting defeat, because it takes you like to be in a quiet room to take a test versus like being able to take a test in a crowded testing center. Like, I mean, you're still taking the same test. You might need 3 weeks to do an essay instead of the 1 week. But like, what's the content after the essay? Because these teachers aren't going to like go, oh, he has a disability paper, so I'm just, even if his essay doesn't meet any of our requirements, I'm still going to give him an A. That's just not the reality. Like, if you don't do the assignment correctly, you're still going to like get the same grade. So accepting like the fact that you might need different resources than like people that you've grown up around, it's okay. We need to stop like thinking that like having anxiety or depression or PTSD or OCD is like any different than breaking your arm or having like heart disease. It's just like the reality of a situation.
I feel that people understand more than I thought they would, so I was break out of my shell and let other people know what I was experiencing and find out what I could find to facilitate my disability. And by doing that, I mean, I dropped out of school in '84. I never thought I could do it again, and that's what was keeping me from doing it. But also, I couldn't have done it without the resources to deal with my disability. Just to mention my achievements, I was voted the Outstanding Student of the Year in Business School and Paralegal Studies in 2014 and 15, and these were by adjunct attorneys that voted me into that position. And all I am is in my own mind, was a recovering drug addict that was just trying to make it in life. And it gave me a lot of self-worth. And it was only because I reached out and took what was handed to me instead of tried to hide it. So I encourage you to just hold out your hand.
I'd like to add my advice. The advice that I would share with a student who might have mental health issues, or that's how the question's worded. My advice would be ask for what you need. Be assertive. It's your education. You know, it's your life. You know, be assertive. Ask for what you need, and you'll eventually graduate. You know, it's your own timeline sometimes. And accommodations, they're not giving you an unfair advantage. They're giving you equal access to your education. And that's what the American Disability Act is all about, is providing people equal access to an education, equal access to a job, equal access to public services. It's not giving you an unfair advantage. You're doing what you can, and I think that people who have disabilities are resilient. Sometimes people don't even know what we deal with on a daily basis, but just showing up, you know, that's a huge part of it. Keep showing up, keep negotiating, keep being assertive, and it's okay to give yourself permission to use accommodations if you qualify for those.
I know we're short on time here, but I feel like, yeah. I'm the type of person, when I pay for something, I have to get everything out of it. And like she said, no one's paying your tuition, so don't care what other people think or what you think they think. You're paying your money to be here, get the most out of it. You pay that $40, that admission fee, it just doesn't give you the access to the lounge, and it doesn't give you the chance to take the acuplacer. You have the gym, you have DRC, and then whole access of clubs, which gives you other like accommodations and other things you could do, like take advantage of everything that you paid for, basically. And yeah, be assertive for sure. Don't be afraid. Like, you think people are judging you, but the reality is they're doing their own thing. They've got their dog or their boyfriend or their girlfriend to worry about. The last thing they want to think about is why you're counting all the chairs or whatever, things like that. So yeah, take advantage of all the stuff that you always hear that. Take advantage. No, really, go upstairs to the DRC if you really need help or if you just want to talk to somebody.
Okay, so one last question. So this panel has the title of Stigma, Stand Up to Stigma. So what have you done to do that, to address the stigma related to mental disability, mental illness, however you want to label it? And what can other people do to address that stigma and change it?
I'll just go really quick. Just talking about it. Everybody here is doing something. Just being here, even if you didn't ask a question or just being here, it makes me feel like people do care. And you might not have a mental illness, but I feel like you're here for a reason. Doesn't matter if it's extra credit, just talking about it. I like to talk about it, obviously, and like blogging. Not good at it, but I still do it. So, Word document. No, just kidding.
So standing up to stigma, I think that if I hear it, I address it in the moment. If I see it, stigma, I address it in the moment. I talk to people, have conversations. If there's something that's going on, like in a workplace setting or a school setting or in a community where people are labeling or stigmatizing people, I try to address it, and I write letters to my legislators. I call them. I have conversations with family members. If someone posts something on Facebook and I think that it's making fun of people with disabilities, I address it. I might send them a private message and just say, that feels like an ouch. Is that what you intended? I also have conversations like that directly with people, even if it's not on Facebook. If I hear something, I address it.
I think it's just time, like it's 2015, it's time just to not be ashamed of like things that we don't know about. I try to do as much scientific research as I can to understand why my brain like acts the way it does. But I think just the reality of a situation is like, yeah, I am like who I am. There's a lot of times in life, like we think that we could talk about some things and like I can share like, oh yeah, I have anxiety, but I can't share that I attempted suicide twice. And like a reality is like, yeah, that happened and it shaped me and I'm healthy now. So if like me sharing this, like great, successful story in my opinion, like how I could be at one point in the like depths of hell and then like now here where I can openly share it, which I never thought would be possible, like can help some other person going through a similar situation and maybe help educate people so they can in turn go and help people that are suicidal, have anxiety, have these like mental disabilities. Then I think there'll cease to be a stigma, because what's weird is like there's not a stigma with like heart disease, there's not a stigma with like asthma, but yet there is with this like mental disability, but it's all caused through chemicals and endorphins and adrenaline that are rushing through our body. It's not like we signed up for any of this.
So I feel like I get judged a lot, especially given the fact that I cut for years and I have lots of scars. And so everywhere I go, people look at me and they judge me, but the best thing that I feel like I can do is just smile back, because, you know, there's going to be so many times where, you know, people will make assumptions and they will look at you and judge you for whatever appearances you may have, and or that give away or lead to a disability that you may have. And I feel like the best thing to do is to just smile, you know, because when you smile at someone, it's going to make them think, oh, why am I giving them this weird look? Like, maybe I should smile back. And I feel like, you know, that's what we should be doing. We should be nice to each other. And I feel like that's a great way to get rid of stigma, is just being nice to each other. So, yeah.
There's a lot of ignorance in this world, and it's not going to end. And we're going to be judged. I'm going to be judged without merit, and I'm going to feel bad sometimes, and I'm going to try and solve a problem that can't be solved sometimes. But what I've learned to do, it's what I used to do. What I've learned to do is just love myself and know that I have things that I can help other people in the world with, and by doing that, I find serenity in my illness. Like I said, there's people that aren't going to change, and those kind of people I'm not sure that I want to have any kind of contact with unless I have to. Doesn't mean I don't like them, it's just that it's better for my health if I stay away from some of those. And that's about the best way that I can handle it. Thank you.
So we're going to wrap up with, the panelists have talked about some of the resources that the college has. So we're just going to talk a little bit about some of those resources, and to do that is Scott Cadera from the Center for Health and Counseling. So I'm going to give him a few minutes, and then I will wrap up. So.
Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Cadera. I'm the manager of counseling services at our Center for Health and Counseling. And I just want to thank the DRC and Melissa for holding this event, and for the panelists for having the courage to come up here and share your stories and your insights. This is a great thing. Sometimes I feel like we at the Counseling Center are the only ones talking about mental health issues, so this is really exciting for me. And just in the interest of destigmatizing, I will say I've been in counseling 3 times, once when I was in my 20s and twice in my 30s, all 3 times when I was going to school, dealing with different stressors. And mental health problems, sometimes we think of those as like the exception, and they're really becoming the norm. Just a couple quick statistics, and then I'll tell you about our services. But according to the CDC, 1 out of every 2 people in the United States will be diagnosed with some kind of mental health disorder during their lifetimes. And then every 2 years here at the college, we do kind of a survey. We send out about 4,000 surveys in conjunction with the American College Health Association. And we just did one this last spring. 83% of those that filled out the survey said they were overwhelmed in the last 12 months by all they had to do. 58% had admitted to experiencing overwhelming anxiety. 36% were so depressed that they couldn't function. And if you're so depressed that you can't function, that's a clinical depression. And then 10% seriously considered suicide in the last 12 months. So mental health problems are kind of pervasive. Every couple of months I see new articles. There's an increasing problem on college campuses. Some of the articles are the College of the Overwhelmed, the College Mental Health Crisis, Students Under Pressure. So there's been a trend the last several years with not only more students needing mental health services, but also having more serious mental health problems. So about our services, at the Center for Health and Counseling, we do have counseling services. This semester, we're going to have 2 full-time counselors, 2 part-time counselors, and we also have 2 practicum students. So we'll have 6 counselors total. And we offer individual counseling and couple counseling, and we're going to try to do some groups this semester. just some short-term workshops on some different mental health problems. We also have 3 nurses at Health and Counseling, so if somebody needs medications for mental health problems, we can prescribe some medications. For more serious mental health problems, we'll probably refer out. And then we also have, just to plug our other services, we also provide massage therapy, which can be good for stress. Students get a $10 massage per semester. And then in terms of our counseling services, that's also $10 a session. So, yeah, which we used to offer a free first session, but this semester all our services are $10 a session. So if you see the free services, that's no longer applicable. But I still think $10 a session is a pretty good bargain for some counseling. So, any questions on any of that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Scott. And really quickly, there are other disability awareness events happening this week. Tomorrow at noon in the AAB, Paul Roberts, who's a faculty member here at the college, is going to be reading from his new memoir, Under Stars. Wednesday at the South City campus is the Assistive Technology Fair, which if you've never been, really, really fun. Especially if you're kind of a technology nerd. Lots of interesting devices and technologies to provide assistance to people with disabilities. And then Thursday, the keynote speaker is Anna Beninati. She's a Paralympian, so she's got a great story. She's a skier. She's local. And that's going to be back here noon on Thursday. And then to wrap up, Rochelle mentioned this, that everyone with a disability is a genius. And it's true. It's true. And sort of, if you've seen the disability awareness promotions around campus, there's a quote on there, which is my favorite quote, about disability, and it's by an artist, Neil Marcus. And he says, "Disability is not a brave struggle or courage in the face of adversity. Disability is an art. It's an ingenious way to live." So hopefully you'll come to some more events and see some of these ingenious ways to live. Finally, I just want to say thank you to this amazing panel. It's been an honor for me to listen to you and hear your stories. I'm going to get emotional, but I'll try not to. Thank you. I know that it takes bravery to talk about anything in front of a group of people, but to talk about your personal experiences in this way, I think is an extra level of courage. So thank you. And please give them all a round of applause.